A single father who's a millionaire sits stunned as a waitress teaches his disabled daughter to dance, never imagining that those simple movements would give rise to an iconic dance troupe and spread hope beyond all boundaries. Hello, my wonderful audience. Get ready for a story that will stir your heart. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're swept up in this journey, and leave a comment below to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. It's always amazing to see people joining us from all around the world today. Victor Lang sat in silence at the little diner, his expensive vest still crisp despite a morning full of tension. In a place where he once controlled everything, lighting, music, even the audience's heartbeat, now felt utterly powerless before his precious young daughter. Zoe, his 9-year-old, sat in her wheelchair, her slender arms tracing arcs in the air. These were not random gestures, but movements with rhythm and feeling. A kind of dance, yet nothing like the spectacles Victor had ever staged. It was something different, almost sacred. As he placed his order, eyes fixed on the menu but ears tuned to his daughter's silken movements, Zoe suddenly accelerated. Her soft, flowing motions became sharp and expressive. Victor froze. He recognized that sensation when a dance transcends mere choreography and tells a story through the body. In that moment, a voice as soft as a breath spoke beside him. "That step, it's on point, Courbet." Victor looked up. A young waitress in uniform, her hair neatly tied back, stood before him. Her smile was gentle, but her eyes reflected equal parts astonishment and hesitation. Victor frowned. She had just named a rare French ballet move hardly seen outside prestigious academies. "What did you say?" he asked, curiosity mixing with concern. Mia Foster nervously twisted the napkin in her hands. "I'm sorry. It's just, I studied dance at Juilliard. I'm not entirely certain, but that movement your daughter just made is a very complex variation of that technique." Victor fell silent. Not because of the famed school Mia mentioned, but because Zoe had never taken a dance lesson. His daughter had never spoken a full sentence, never communicated clearly with the world. Yet here was a stranger, reading Zoe's silent language. Victor's heart pounded, each beat hammering against his ribs. A faint spark of hope flickered inside him as if someone had just nudged open a door he thought sealed forever. He regarded Mia more closely, eyes a mixture of suspicion and longing. "Are you sure? You really recognized it?" Mia nodded slowly. "I performed that variation in a senior recital. Very few use it because it's so difficult to convey true emotion through that step. But your daughter, she pulled it off, and more than that, she's telling a story." Victor glanced back at Zoe. She continued her dance, unaware of the adults analyzing her. Her wide eyes fixed on no one, yet her hands spoke something deeper than words. He had never seen his daughter so expressive. A strange sensation ran down Victor's spine. He couldn't fully explain it, but he knew this. It was no longer just about a desperate father trying to reach his daughter. It was a clue, a message, an opportunity he couldn't afford to miss. "Mia," Victor spoke her name for the first time, softly but with resolve. "What if I told you those movements could be the key to saving an entire theater from closing? Would you believe me?" Mia hesitated, then, glancing at Zoe, her eyes glimmered. "I don't know what's happening, but I believe what I saw. And this girl, she's not just dancing. She's trying to tell someone something. Perhaps she's trying to tell you." Victor swallowed hard. He had never felt smaller. A millionaire who could launch a show from nothing, yet he now stood before these two women, a silent child and a former artist turned waitress, and recognized that his future lay where he least expected. He didn't know how Zoe had learned that ballet step or how Mia recognized it, but in that moment, Victor understood. Everything was about to change. Victor couldn't shake the image of Zoe's strange movements from his mind. Those nameless, expressive dance steps, seeming to hold an entire hidden world within the little girl, planted in him a profound doubt, an inner prompting so strong he had to act. He returned to that small diner, not for coffee or bread, but for the waitress, Mia Foster. The restaurant's manager, an older woman named Dolores, after some polite conversation and Victor's careful inquiries, finally spoke up. "She used to be a dancer, an exceptional one," she said, her voice dropping as though sharing a sad tale. "Juilliard. That girl could light up an entire stage with a single tilt of her head. But then, her sister passed away. Cancer, and Mia never danced again." Victor went silent. He wasn't used to such personal stories. Every event in his life followed logic, risk management, calculation. But Mia's pain lay beyond any scenario he'd ever known. A girl born to dance who'd folded up her dream like an unsent letter only to don a uniform, offer a gentle smile, and ask patrons whether they preferred their coffee hot or iced. That afternoon, Victor waited until the diner had emptied, then sought out Mia. No detours, no finesse. He looked her in the eye and asked, "I need to know about that dance you recognized earlier. Where have you seen it before?" Mia stiffened, a flicker of surprise, then she quietly turned away as if she'd misheard. But she retrieved from her apron pocket a thin, worn notebook whose corners had softened over time. "I sketched out the steps I learned in school," she said, placing the notebook on the table in a voice barely above a confession. "There were passages I never performatively saw in my dreams, or imagined after sleepless nights missing my sister." Victor flipped through the pages. Crude pencil drawings annotated with insider shorthand only a fellow dancer would understand. And on the final page, he saw it. The very movement Zoe had made, the precise tilt of the wrist, the exact angle of the foot, the held pause that a dancer uses to convey emotion. "Zoe's never had dance lessons," he said, "yet she can do it, and I think you're the only one who can teach it to her." Mia drew back as if burned. "I'm not a dancer anymore," she said with a bitter laugh. "I'm just a waitress with tired feet and a past nobody wants to mention." "But I do want," Victor whispered, "because my daughter needs it, and I think I need it too." For the first time, Mia held his gaze. In her eyes were doubt and fear, but beneath it all stirred something else. A long silent string suddenly struck, producing its first note after years of quiet. She exhaled deeply. "If I do this," she said slowly, "I'll have to face the part of me I buried. I don't know if I'm ready to see myself back on that stage." Victor said nothing. He simply nodded slowly, sincerely. No pressure, no bargaining. After a moment that felt endless, Mia nodded. "Okay, I'll try. For her, and maybe for myself." Neither of them realized it then, but from that moment forward, something had begun. Not just a dance, but the revival of dreams thought dead, the invisible thread binding three strangers together by unspoken pain, and a fragile hope that from what has shattered, something beautiful can emerge. Victor had never felt so nervous leading Mia onto the stage. He had guided hundreds of actors, directors, and investors through here, witnessed thunderous standing ovations closing out countless shows. Yet today, the only thing tightening his chest was the look in his daughter's eyes and Mia's calm, steady gaze. Mia didn't ask many questions. She simply regarded Zoe with a patience Victor had never shown. No pity, no frantic attempts to fix or improve her as so many others had done. She sat beside Zoe as if they'd known each other forever, as though no distance separated them at all. Victor watched quietly from afar. At first, Zoe remained silent, her eyes drifting away, her hands no longer dancing like when Victor first saw her. He was afraid Mia would be disappointed, afraid his daughter would retreat again into her own world. But Mia didn't flinch. She simply repeated a few gentle movements, bit by bit, as if gently knocking on Zoe's heart with the unnamed memories within the child. Then something extraordinary happened. Victor saw Zoe's lips curve into a faint smile, so fragile he thought he'd imagined it, but he hadn't. The girl was responding, not with words but with her body. Her initial, hesitant motions grew more fluid. Zoe's hand followed Mia's wrist in a circle, sometimes a little off, sometimes perfectly matching. But, most importantly, the child did not recoil. Zoe wanted to dance. Victor's heart exploded in silent joy. He'd grown used to controlling every aspect of his life, but at that moment, he was utterly powerless before his own emotions. Overwhelmed by wonder, gratitude, and a heartbreaking realization that for years he'd only loved his daughter in desperation, never knowing how to truly help her. In the days that followed, Victor quietly observed this strange journey. Mia never hurried. She always began with a listening gaze, then moved her body. She didn't teach Zoe in the usual way, but rather awakened something already lying within the girl. Victor realized that talent perhaps isn't taught, it needs someone else's belief to bring it to life. Then one afternoon, as Mia paused midway through a practice, watching Zoe perform what seemed like random steps, she suddenly whispered something that made Victor's heart skip a beat. "This isn't just a dance, it's a story." That sentence pierced him like an arrow long poised. A story exactly what his production had been missing. He'd struggled for months to revive the theater after the pandemic, focusing on structure, sound, light. But there was no soul. And now the silent girl he'd once despaired over was igniting something no stagecraft could: genuine emotion. Victor felt he'd just discovered something more precious than any million-dollar contract. Not merely a chance to resurrect a play, but a gateway to his own daughter. A chance for Zoe to speak in her own terms. And Mia. She wasn't only helping Zoe find her voice. She was rekindling in herself a dream she'd thought shattered forever. What moved Victor most of all was the tiny spark he saw in her eye proof, that someone who had lost everything still had the courage to believe in new beginnings. From a single movement, from a wordless child, and from a father who refused to give up. Dear viewers, take a moment to relax or grab a drink and stay tuned for the next surprising twists in our story. Comment 1 below if you're enjoying this tale, so we know you're still here. Victor couldn't remember exactly when his feelings for Mia began to change. At first it was admiration for the woman single-handedly drawing Zoe out of her silent world, then gradually it grew into an emotion he dared not name. Not because he didn't understand it, but because he feared that naming it would shatter everything so fragile. He had witnessed countless talents and beauties, but never had anyone moved him as Mia did. In her was a calm he always lacked, an ability to hear what had never been spoken. The way she touched Zoe's life gently, yet profoundly, made Victor feel small, and at the same time, rescued. He'd once believed he alone understood his daughter. But it turned out that some doors only open when the one who knocks knows how to wait instead of breaking down the barrier, and Mia knew how to wait. That evening, after they'd both stayed behind on the stage to refine Zoe's finale, the air between them changed. Everyday gestures demonstrating a step, adjusting a hand, stepping back to take in the whole scene suddenly felt more deliberate, more unhurried. Both sensed something growing between them, silent but unmistakable. Mia broke the silence first. She turned to Victor, her gaze resolute yet tinged with hesitation. "I think it's time for Zoe to perform for real." She said it as a statement, not a question. Victor went still. Perform? On the real stage? In front of a real audience? The idea was even more terrifying than the tense investor meetings he'd faced every week. The show was his last hope to save the company after the pandemic. If it failed, if Zoe couldn't bear the pressure, he wasn't sure whether his heart or hers would survive. "But if she succeeds," Mia continued, reading his worries, "it won't just save the stage, it could change both your lives." Victor looked at her. That look, no pressure, no pleading, simply pure belief, a faith he'd never before seen anyone give him, and he nodded. Not because his fears vanished, but because in that moment he realized no trust comes without risk. But the greatest risk would be letting the most precious thing slip away out of fear. When Mia turned to fetch her notebook, Victor stepped forward. His hand brushed lightly against hers, a wordless thank you. That momentary touch froze them both. Eyes met. Silence. No words could capture the surging emotion. Then, as if all their days of waiting and understanding condensed into one breath, they shared a kiss soft as a whisper, yet containing countless unspoken truths. But the instant their lips parted, Mia recoiled. Her eyes flickered not with regret, but with fear. In a voice choked with unspoken weight, she whispered, "I can't let myself fail again, Victor. I'm not sure I'm strong enough." And she turned away in haste, as though if she stayed another second, she'd never leave. Mia's absence fell over him like a sudden chill. Zoe, as if sensing the rupture, froze mid-dance. No more movement, no sparkle in her eyes. The girl sat motionless, hands still, as if the invisible thread connecting her to the world had just been severed. Victor looked at his daughter and felt a deep terror rising, not afraid of losing a performance, but of losing the most beautiful gift ever to grace their lives. He realized Mia wasn't merely Zoe's dance coach. She was the bridge between father and daughter, the spark rekindling what he'd thought extinguished. If he let her walk away in fear, he would forfeit the chance to believe in something deeper, an unnameable bond too real to deny. Victor couldn't wait any longer. After many sleepless nights, he realized the only thing he could do now was to fight with his heart, not with strategy. He took Zoe back to the little cafe where it all began, the place with the one woman who had understood his daughter's silent language. Mia was wiping down the last table, her eyes filled with sadness, shoulders bowed as if bearing the weight of nameless failures. She didn't look up until she heard a very soft whisper, not from any person's mouth, but from the empty air, carried on the familiar rhythm of Zoe's hands, gentle as the lessons Mia had taught her. Zoe was dancing, right in the middle of the cafe. With no mirror, no music, she silently let her hands speak. A rounded movement, a fully expressive tilt of the head. Mia froze. She set the cloth down on the table, her hands suspended mid-air. A feeling both familiar and bittersweet washed over her like a wave crashing into her chest. "Your daughter needs you," Victor said, his voice hoarse from days of holding back. "And I can't do this without you." Mia didn't answer right away. She only looked at Zoe, her gaze fragmenting, then softening. A notification from Victor's phone sounded in the hush. It was from the theater organizers. "Zoe's dance has been officially selected for performance before the entire audience." Mia gripped the table's edge, her eyes widening. Old memories flooded back, the feeling of standing under spotlights, her heartbeat syncing with her footsteps. But woven through them was fear. Fear of not being good enough, of another failure tearing apart what had just been mended. Victor said nothing more. He knew Mia didn't need pushy words now. She needed to feel believed in, and she needed to see that this time she would not stand alone. The performance took place just days later. The theater was packed. No one knew exactly what to expect, only whispers of a remarkable girl with a never-before-seen dance. Backstage, Mia stood beside Zoe, wearing no dancer's costume, no elaborate makeup. Only her eyes, still those same eyes, but now glowing with something unmistakable: faith. Mia didn't perform. She led Zoe to center stage, then took a few steps back, her gaze tender. The lights beamed down, and in that moment, Zoe began to dance. No one in the audience spoke. The girl needed no music. Her body was the music. Each movement slow, profound, at times trembling, was so genuine it held the crowd breathless. Every gesture was a call, a whisper from a soul never allowed to speak. Mia needed only to stand by. Zoe remembered every beat as if stamped on her heart. When the final movement closed, a hush fell. Then, as if breaking free, the entire hall rose in a standing ovation. Applause thundered like never before. Tears, sobs, and unceasing applause. Zoe's dance transcended art. It proved what so many doubted, that silence itself can become the most stirring melody. Immediately after the show, Victor received word. Multiple major sponsors had committed funding that very night. Over $4 million poured in within hours. The company was saved. But what left Victor speechless wasn't the amount, it was the look on Zoe's face. Radiant, alive, brimming with confidence. She had outgrown herself. Amid the crowd, Victor moved toward Mia. She still stood there, eyes red, her hand trembling. He didn't touch her this time. He simply looked deep into her eyes and whispered, "You didn't just save the company, you saved our future." Mia broke down. But these were no longer tears of fear or regret. They were the first tears to fall when she truly knew she had come back not just as a dancer, but as an indispensable part of the miraculous story they had just written. Victor stood center stage, his eyes quietly tracing the small scratches on the wooden floor marks of time, of rehearsals, and of unnameable moments of triumph. The air here still carried the scent of floorboards and the warmth of stage lights, along with the echo of the thunderous applause from that historic performance night. But today, the stage was not for a show. Today marked a beginning. Zoe sat silently in her wheelchair, holding a shimmering ribbon she had made herself, its colors blended without rule, yet bearing a raw, spontaneous beauty mirroring the dance she once performed. Her small hands gently lifted the ribbon and offered it to Mia. Zoe said nothing, but her eyes shone as if to convey something only they could understand. Mia stepped forward, no longer the waitress who had once shrunk from others' gazes. She wore simple yet elegant attire, chosen not to impress but to show she had conquered her fears. She accepted Zoe's gift, her heart fluttering. There was something tender in this silence, a wordless, "Thank you." Victor approached, his hand clutching a small object in his jacket pocket. He spoke only when his gaze met Mia's, drawing out a small silver-plated pin engraved with two dancing hands evoking Zoe's first dance. The symbol represented their entire journey from silence to brilliance. "Together," Victor said, his voice thick with emotion, "we will share Zoe's gift, not just through performances, but as a mission." Mia looked at the pin in his hand, then at Victor, then at Zoe. She did not nod immediately. She pinned it to her chest over, her heart then softly whispered, "I'm ready." Before long, the name Lumina Dance Collective was born, a charitable dance troupe fronted by Zoe's image and guided by Mia's heart. Each performance was more than art. It was a living call to give children with disabilities access to the arts. They mounted no grandiose productions. They told real stories through motion, through glances, through steadfast resolve. Zoe, silent yet standing as the troupe's focal point, was more than a child in a wheelchair. She was light itself. She proved that while bodies may be limited, spirits are free. She danced with hands, with eyes, with the rhythm of a heart that Mia and Victor alone had once listened to deeply. News of the troupe spread quickly. From Los Angeles to New York to Europe and Asia, each stage they graced witnessed astonishment, then tears. Most moving were the thousands of letters from parents worldwide, those who had believed their own children would never tread a stage, now inspired to believe they could. Victor was no longer merely a producer fighting to save a company. He was a father learning to hear silence. A man who had lost everything yet found what matters most: faith. Mia no longer feared the spotlight. She became an inspiration to anyone who had ever given themselves up. And Zoe was the heart, the flame, the eternal dance.